So what happened, Wade, is I went from a 25% sales close to a near 85% sales close, closing half the time. And by the way, during this time, I also doubled my rates. And the feedback that came in is people were just so grateful that I didn't waste their time. They were so grateful that I gave them full transparency up front. They felt like they had the power and the control.
Welcome, everybody. I am so excited to have Amber Vilhauer with us, Amber V, to talk with us about how you can leverage for quality and quantity. And so much of what she and I have talked about leverages so much of what she does. She does huge book launches. She helps people with their website. She helps people with their branding. There's so many cool things she does. And I'm let her talk about that a little bit more. But what I really love about Amber's work is she's unapologetic about being awesome. And there's a lot of people that have trouble with that. Shoot, I've got a master's degree in psychology and I still struggle with that. So first of all, welcome to the show, Amber. Thank you so much for coming out.
You're the best, Wade. Thank you for having me.
So one of the things you and I have talked about, so the first thing that actually really just blew my mind, I had met Amber through a mutual contact and did an interview with her for a different podcast, but her onboarding process was so clear and so full of value of how I could be the best guest to the show and what I should do, that even in the process of being on the show, I was being coached up, I was being brought to a different level. And every once in a while you meet somebody where just in doing business with them, you're like, okay, whatever they do, I want to do that. Do they sell cookies? Do they, whatever it is. And as I looked further, I wanted to see what she's up to. Now, of course, when you meet somebody that does higher end stuff, all of a sudden, at least for me, I'm like, okay, so how high end does this get and how many zeros, and kind of freaks me out. And she had this really simple, and by the way, and how many things do I have to go through in strategy sessions of 2 hours of sweat and blood and tears to then finally even, find out what they're charging. And she didn't have that. It was really simple, like this pricing thing that said, here's what I do. Here's how we rock it. Here's what the investment is. And it all made sense to me. And so I wanted to just start with that. I want to get to the quality and quantity first, but as somebody who helps people with their brands to, again, be unapologetic, there's so many coaches out there that in a lot of people's minds overcharge. And then there's so many people, if you're in the field, you're like, gosh, there's so many of us that undercharge. How do you first start helping somebody look at not just what they should be charging, but how to be delivering in a way that other people look at them? Because when I looked at your prices, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes cool. Might not be able to afford all of it right now, but I was like, cool, I want to, which was a very different thing from sometimes like, how do you do that? How do you deliver that? And how do you help your clients with that?
Well, I have to tell you a little story, Wade, that when I first started in G&G, which stands for No Guts, No Glory, back in 2007, I was a website designer, right? And I did marketing. And so what would happen is you'd go to my website, you'd read a bunch of content, you'd click the contact button, request a call. I'd have an hour-long call with you. That would really be our first time to interact. We'd build a relationship. I'd learn about your project. And then you would ask me like, well, what's the process to build a website? So I'd go step by step through the process for the 87 millionth time on these calls. And then the question that always made my heart thump faster, well, what's it going to cost me? And then, sometimes people would say, wow, that's a no-brainer. Let's go. Other times people would say, oh my gosh, that's so expensive. And other times people were neutral and said they'd circle back, and usually they wouldn't. But about 25% of the time, at the end of these hour-long conversations, somebody would want to move forward. And a percentage of the time, they were great clients that I really loved working with. And most of the time it was okay. Or some clients were conflict clients. But man, Wade, after 2 years, I just thought there has got to be a better way than this. So then I thought back to my Cutco days when I sold Cutco cutlery. And what I learned at Cutco Cutlery that made me such a great salesperson is it's all about the education that you provide and the experience that you provide. And I also put myself in my prospect's shoes. And I thought, well, what would I want if I went to a website? I wouldn't want to have to go through a bunch of hoops to find the answers to the questions that I want. I would want to know who is the person really that I'm about to do business with? Because I understood persuasive copywriting, right? I knew how to write a sexy marketing headline, but that doesn't mean that you really understand the person behind the sale. And so I thought, all right, I have to find a way to get people to know the real me up front. Then I have to find a way to educate them about my process. And then I have to find a way to give them full transparency on my pricing all up front. And if I can accomplish that, well, then instead of an hour-long call, I could have a 30-minute call. And then people would actually start to come into the conversation, Wade, saying, Amber, I feel like I already know you. Okay, so I was looking at your pricing menu and I want to get a 60-hour block of time on a 6-month payment plan, but here are my questions. And I'd be like, what? So what happened, Wade, is I went from a 25% sales close to a near 85% sales close, closing half the time. And by the way, during this time, I also doubled my rates. And the feedback that came in is people were just so grateful that I didn't waste their time. They were so grateful that I gave them full transparency up front. They felt like they had the power and the control, which is great because I don't need the power and control. I just want the right people coming in. I don't need to trick you into hiring me. I want you to want to hire me and be confident in that decision by the end of our conversation before we onboard. So this was the process that I rolled out, Wade, and what you spoke to. Basically, people go to my website, they get to watch a video, work and connected and engaged. I ask them to download my pricing menu, and only then are they given an opportunity to book into my calendar. Since then, only my dream clients keep coming in. I've never had to worry about where my next client is coming from. Our retention rate is through the roof. Our word of mouth rate is through the roof. And this is how you can also build a very profitable 7-figure business with a 1,500 person Instagram following. I mean, I don't have the world's biggest following, but I have the right following.
That's awesome. There's so much that's in there, and I'm going to speak to a couple things. And sometimes I speak to the audience almost as if you're not here. Like,
Good. We should. It's about them. It's not about us.
I forget which way it is on the thing, if it's that way or that way. But so, as somebody who's had a software business for 20 years with less than a 1,500 person email, it sounds very similar to things I've done when I got dialed in. Now, in my case, in my insurance agency background, which I've been in for years, I know their world so well, and I describe it. And just like you're saying, and some of it's word of mouth and some of it's from videos I create. But it kind of goes back to that shift when you realize in life that you don't want to try to have friends. You want the people who like you for who you are to be your friends, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And, or whatever it is, or jobs or whatever it might be. And what you're saying, I think that's so hard to replicate. At least I found at times different ways to replicate it, but I find I get better the more I communicate. Here's who I am. Here's what I do. Here's how I roll. Because some people are like, ooh, disgusting, want nothing to do with you, and all those different things. But to your point, it's kind of an unsavory experience on both sides. The strategy session, and it's an evolution that's happened over the years. But this, there's so many different versions of it. The one where you really push the pain button and you keep pushing and make sure the client feels the pain, and it feels so. And I've not done that. I've learned that.
Absolutely not.
It's like, okay, I don't want to do that.
No,
because it feels icky.
Yeah.
And then there's the other one where you just say, okay, now, for example, I don't want to waste someone like yours time, because especially if I feel like I'm talking to somebody that's currently operating in the business world at a higher level. I mean, we're all loved and all that stuff, but I'm aware when somebody's operating a higher level or lower level for the most part. The last thing I want to do, especially if I want to be in somewhere, a business partner of them or associate or client, is to waste their time. Because that's one of the most embarrassing things. So then I found my clients telling me, hey, my friend wanted to talk to you, but they didn't want to waste your time. And so in similar ways, in my case, I had some data that they would fill out on there, at least these insurance agencies, because I know their business model. It's like, okay, if you tell me what's going on, I'll spend 30 minutes talking to you about exactly what you can do with your business model. So it's slightly different. But at least I felt like, okay, this is not like you said, the canned sales calls. Oh my God, they're so painful for both sides.
Totally.
And yet, what really struck me was how well you were able to, again, literally, okay, so I get referred by another friend. there's this girl, Amber. Don't know who Amber is. Her podcast is such and such. Maybe you want to be a guest on there. Thought, okay, I don't know. Sure, let me check it out. And again, the onboarding process. Not only did I feel I got to know you, not in the sense of we're besties, but like, okay, I know what she's about. I
Yeah.
align with that. And I also saw that, because there was this 5 video series that would teach, okay, how to be this best guest. And along the line, I saw, wow, this is so brilliant, because there's certain people that after 2 emails, like, I don't want to be a guest. It's too much work. It's, just like watching videos. So thinking through the process, maybe to explain it, because I think I kind of have a handle on it. How does it when a person then has to first watch a video before they can even get on your calendar and see your prices? I don't know. It's almost like, yes, we're gonna have kids. We're gonna name them this, 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 and this. We're gonna live here. My mother-in-law is like this. So now, are you still interested in me? I don't know. It's like this really like expedited thing, like those, with some of those dating shows or whatever. How does the process screen in and screen out people the way you design it? Because I'm assuming it's pretty intentional.
Everything I do is super intentional. Like guaranteed, if you go to my website and you see a button in a weird place, it's there for a reason. Like everything is very intentional. But I think I first just had to really identify like who I want to attract in the most. I want to attract in people who are really serious. And so, if you're serious, you're going to want to be prepared. You're going to want to have thinking time. You're going to want to really get to know the person that you're about to hire. Like, there are just things that matter to people who are serious about getting results. And they also don't like wasting their time. I don't like wasting my time, right? So, actually, this process, though, it appears like I have these barriers in place where you can't get access to me. It really is designed thoughtfully for your benefit to save your time so that you're not getting into a 30-minute call with me just to find out that you hate my personality or something. Like I'm way too smiley for you and you don't like all the flowers in my background. Totally okay. um, so it is. I have had one person complain about this, by the way, Wade, and it was this grumpy man, super grumpy. He was like a financial like advisor, and he goes through the hoops and he gets into a call with me and he's just frowning and kind of grumpy about everything. And how are you going to help me? And I got to get the leads. I mean, I seriously, you can't even make this stuff up. And what happened was I gave him unbelievable strategy. I mean, like it was some of my best stuff. I was really proud of myself. And at the end of the conversation, he's like, that's pretty good, but I have to ask you a serious question. Why don't you have your phone number on the website? And I said, well, actually, it's by design. I'm really careful about who I let into my inner circle, and I don't want to give my personal cell phone number out for privacy reasons. And I'm telling him, and he looked at me like I was just disgusting, like the scum underneath his shoe. And I thought, by the way, he ended up not moving forward. I kind of said, I don't think this is a fit, and he agreed. But it was perfect because that showed me, it reinforced again, this is somebody who was frustrated about my experience. Well, you're not a fit for me. And he was the kind of guy that just wanted to fling money at an agency and have leads come in and be hands off. That's not my people. I couldn't have thrived in an environment like that. So you just kind of have to, all to say, Wade, you really have to look at like, what are your boundaries? What's important to you? How do you want to protect your time? It's scary. It's scary when you unpublish your phone number on the website or when you put barriers up like this because you think nobody's going to hire you. That's not what happens. It just simply weeds out the people that would have been a problem client for you anyway. It's the client that would have cost way more than whatever you quoted them and would have made your life a living, you know what. Instead, the right people come in, they appreciate your process. They want to emulate your process because they want to protect their time too. And it just sells them even more. They're like, wow, this is top notch. This is what I want for my life. I'm going to hire Amber. And that's how it works.
That's awesome. There's so many things there that, just for those people who are perhaps either starting out or, you know, anytime you start a business, it's easy to say, oh gosh, well, I just need to get cash flow coming in. And my short answer to that
Totally.
is have a job and start a side hustle first and be
Sure.
really particular in your side hustle. And when
Yep.
you reach, eventually reach a point, now, you might not have that luxury. Sometimes things happen different ways, but if you can, it still takes a certain amount of time to attract quality, to figure out who you are as an entrepreneur, what you're doing, what you want to do, who likes you, who doesn't like you. And to
Mm-hmm.
your point, the most dangerous client. So if you're a newer entrepreneur, if you're an older entrepreneur or more experienced entrepreneur, you already know this.
Oh yeah.
One of the most
The
dangerous
hard way, you know this
clients
the
is
hard
the one
way.
that, sorry?
You know this the hard way because you've
Yes,
been
is
there,
the
done that.
one of the worst clients is the one who writes the big check, and but they do it like this, like, here, you do it. And you're like, and when you're like, you're just so excited the first time to get the check, or at least I was, and I didn't see it. And in my case, it was coaching and sales coaching with team members. And I literally had, the guy was undoing what I was teaching the team because he liked to be at the center and have attention, but his method wasn't effective. So I teach the team. And then a week later, one of the assistants would say, Wade, just so you know, every time you teach this, he's going back and doing this. And of course, in that case, I was able to manage it. It was a longtime friend of the family and whatnot, but it turns into, if you're not careful, that person's out there saying, well, I spent X thousand with Wade or X thousand with Amber on this, and it didn't work out. And so all that gets out is that, when
Mm-hmm.
basically what happens is they didn't show up ready to play. This is a big
Mm-hmm.
boy, big girl deal we're trying to do here. And in your case, if it's a website, if you don't realize a website's a big deal, then you're maybe missing things. Now, you might not have the budget for a big website, but it's a big deal. When I'm doing coach with people about,
Yeah.
their lifestyle and what they do on their weekends and how they spend time with their family and their friends and their work, that's big stuff. If you're like, oh yeah, well, maybe you can save me an hour. Like if that's all you get from what I do, like some people say, Wade, I hear you do productivity work. Yeah, that's what I do. Like, Amber, I hear you do WordPress websites, great. There's something so much more to it. And yet I think part of the piece that has impressed me also is just not just your materials, not just your communications, but in even dealing with you and or at times your team members, how things are done. So it feels to me like you've applied this same concept to the people you work with, the people you hire. Maybe speak to a little bit about that, about how the quality of the people, not only the clients you attract, but the people you work with, allows you then to scale. Because, one of your business models is called leverage to scale. And it's about scaling things. But as I think as Bill Gates had said, if you're scaling inefficient things or unprofitable things, we're just going to get more unprofitable. If you're buying bad real estate, stop buying it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you have that quality then lead the quantity and then allow for that possibility of quantity and scaling and the efficiencies of outsourcing and all the other stuff you do?
It really starts with identifying your core values. I'm not even kidding you. And I didn't really understand the value of this until later, into many years later of owning the company. Now, I've always had kind of a pure heart, and that comes from having a really, really difficult time growing up. And so I just kind of turned into a little bit of a softie, but I like that about myself. And because of my good heart, it makes it easier for me to build relationships with people and to connect with them. But I still didn't understand the value of core values until, in the past few years, I'd say. And that's when things were a total game changer for me, Wade. So what I did was I really evaluated what matters most to me. And meaningful connection was at the top of the list. Better together, really seeing how much I enjoy collaboration instead of working by myself and needing all of the eggs in my basket. Leaning into change was a really important one, because change is constant. I want to be a person of courage. I don't want to be a person of fear. So these are just some of my core values, and unwavering excellence is another one. I have really, really high standards. So once I really identified some of my core values, Wade, everything became a lot easier. The only other thing that I had to do was to identify the one person I wanted to work with, like stamp this person out, work with them for the rest of time. Because what happened then from a marketing and sales perspective is I was able to live my core values when I was doing a video, when I was writing an email, when I was being interviewed on a podcast, whatever it was. It wasn't sloppy. I prepared. I leaned into the interview. I made connection with the podcast host or with the camera, because I was always holding my ideal person in the back of my mind. Even now, I've thought about her several times. It's a girl named Heather. I know everything about Heather. I know what she thinks about when she wakes up in the middle of the night, and her guilty pleasure when, a caramel frappuccino that she's sipping on at the checkout of the grocery store after writing this blog post that she loved writing the blog post, but she hated the technology and it was always frustrating to her. Like the little details of who this woman is, I know her intimately. And every time, I've even done it today, I've been talking to Heather through this camera lens because I know that not that I'm just trying to attract women, because actually 70 to 80% of my clients are men, but it's that we share the same core values. I know how to speak to Heather. I know how to protect Heather and how to nurture Heather. And when she needs a big kick in the you know what, and when she just needs somebody to say, I understand. You start to develop that relationship and it transforms your marketing and your sales and who you ultimately attract into the business. But then to your point, you need a solid team of people that are going to take care of Heather, right? Because I can't do it by myself. So then I had to really, you start with the same core values, and that's the standard by which you manage your operation internally. It's the standard I hold people to when I'm hiring them. I have hired some of my best people in the most random ways. I am so unconventional, Wade. I don't post a job ad and let millions of people pour in and interview them painstakingly and blah, blah, blah. Instead, as an example, my most two recent hires, I was sitting at a restaurant and I've always been impressed by this restaurant. Good culture, great people. And they were headed into their second round of lockdown. And this was like the waitress's last day. And I said, you know what? I'm so impressed by you. Here's my business card. If you'd like some extra income, I'd be happy to have a call with you and onboard you. I hired that server and the hostess that night, both full time, and they've been phenomenal employees. So you just start to, once you identify those core values, you know who are the right fits for the culture. You know who's going to take care of your clients. I can teach you how to build a website. I can't teach you how to be a phenomenal human. So you get the right people internally, you build documentation that teaches that team how to operate at the level and the efficiency and with creativity that you require. You, in your marketing, you have your approach, you're sharing your values that way, you're communicating and connecting. And then all of a sudden, as the business owner, you get to sort of elevate up. And I'm not saying it's easy. Running a business is for sure one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it's very fulfilling, because you get to see how many lives you're impacting, and the team, you're making them fulfilled, and they feel like they belong, and they have ownership, and they have control, and they get to thrive. And your clients are having such a good experience. They feel held. And it was because you did the work in the beginning. You didn't slap it together and cut corners and just try to make money. You were thoughtful, you were intentional, you cared, and people paid attention. And now they just want to tell others about their experience.
That's awesome. And, for those listening, I've, invited Amber to be a speaker on an event that I, host part of the speaker selection for this. I mean, it's just what you're saying is because I just saw the way you operate. And if you've been in the business world long enough, you see all sorts of operation levels. You mentioned something earlier about, sexy sales copy. I come from the insurance industry. We've heard every word track. We made up most of the word track. Hey, Amber, is it today or is it tomorrow? You're going to buy my stuff. And, just all the stuff that you're like, ugh, I really want nothing to do with that. What I love about what you're doing, to put it in a different way, is you hear a lot of people that talk about, okay, well, there's these airy fairy ideas, or they call them woo, or they call them soft or whatnot. And then there's people like, well, I'm a bottom line person. And it's like, okay, well, we have an emotional and a spiritual dimension, woo woo. We have an intellectual and a physical dimension, yes, bottom line. To me, those have to integrate. But a lot of people, don't seem to understand that. And one of the things that you and I talked about in the pre-interview was the idea that the team, that, those softer skills, the humanistic skills, the relationship, those are important also because your team members aren't machines. So your team members, hopefully you're going to give them a solid process, as left-brained and as, detailed as possible. But if that's all you give them, that's not going to work. And on the other hand, if you're just happy and you're like, hey, we're going to help people, but you have no process, you're not going to get very far.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned something about how you're speaking to Heather, and obviously, you said yet 70% of your clients are male. Would
Mhm.
you say then that there is that sort of sense of that multidimensional person that you're trying to attract that kind of gets it, that like, yes, there's multiple things going on. It's not just one thing or the other?
Sure. And that's also why you kind of have to really look at your values. You don't just have one thing that you value. So even your values are multidimensional, having unwavering excellence and being able to lean into change and then better together. I mean, these are different slices that make up the organization. And so what's happening is when I'm speaking in an environment like this, there's going to be Bob who's like, I like that she's a go-getter. And then there's Beth who's like, oh, but she's really thoughtful in her approach, and everybody is being drawn into a different side, right? But it's a side that they might not even consciously be aware of that really matters to them when making a purchasing decision. And that's why, honestly, Wade, I don't get the whole scarcity thing. I mean, there's 8 billion people on the planet. Like, how many WordPress website designers do you think are out there? I mean, seriously, there's so many WordPress website designers out there. And how have I been able to thrive during that time? By the way, most of those designers are men. Most agency owners are men. So how was I able to do it? By not paying attention to what other people are doing, believing in abundance, being clear on my values, being fully expressive of who I am and trusting, and it worked. I love that proverb, leap and the net will appear. And sometimes you just kind of have to take that approach in business too.
I really love what you just said there about ignoring what other people listen to. One of the coaches I've been blessed to learn from it from at times, Dan Sullivan, the strategic coach, he talks about, it's one of the toughest things as an entrepreneur is by our nature, we're like, yeah, I'm doing it my way. And of course, there are times when you have to listen to the marketplace because the marketplace
Sure.
ultimately decides, but there is this sense of how you're going to do things. And you mentioned something earlier about, and it relates to the scarcity conversation around how you didn't make your phone number available to something of a certain generation where that's like, ooh, that to them that might be a red flag, that's okay, she's shady, she's fly by night. Because maybe 20 years ago, yes, that would have been shady, fly by night. Today maybe not so much. And but the other thing you mentioned, it has held so true for me. So for years I was trying to work a 4-day work week, as Yoda might say, but not actually working a 4-day work week. And one of my coaches had just said, Wade, either you're going to do it or not. Stop using your software season as an excuse to say, well, in this time of the year, I work 4 days and this time I don't. He's like, just do it. And even with my software clients, I was a little kind of skittish. And yet what happened is not only with the software clients, but especially the consulting clients, the coaching clients, when they realized I wasn't available on a Friday, aside from the fact that it was kind of like high school dating, like, less supply, more demand, just like basics. But it was like, wow, what's he doing that he can afford to not take a call on a Friday and just be like, yep, don't need it. And it's not that I'm making bajillions of dollars. It's number one, I do manage my expenses and my lifestyle as best as I can so that, I can afford that. But also to your point, when I find the right person, as you've said, there's not a lot of, well, how about this? There's not a lot of nickel and diamond. We're both kind of like, okay, should I be giving you more? Should you be giving me more? Should I? And I don't know about you, but well, it seems like you do because you said this, you want that person engaged. So when I'm talking coaching with people, I like to mention the money investment and the time investment, because the time investment, if you're an entrepreneur and somebody doesn't mention the time investment, to me,
Sure.
that's almost like a red flag. Like, okay, you don't speak my language, because you remember when the courses first came out, like online courses about 10, 12 years ago, people are like, I've got 150 videos and 75 hours of content. And you're like, why? Teach me how to do it in 2 minutes. I'll actually pay you more. I don't want 100, I don't want 150 videos. I just want to learn this stuff. And in
Yeah.
my case, because of who my audience is, a lot of them, before I got into more working with entrepreneurs in general, and I was just working with that group, that they're insurance agency owners. It's a steady business model. It's a brick and mortar model. Uh, they have a good BS filter, and they're like, wait, give me the answer, man. I'll pay you for the answer. Like, really, if you got magic brownies, man, give me your magic brownies. I'll buy your magic brownies. I don't need your software or your coaching. So I got no magic brownies. Okay, so it's software and coaching it is.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that's so huge. I want to maybe tweak this a little bit and or pivot, because some people listening right now might not know a little bit about who you work with and what you do as far as book launches. And so I've realized I'm horrible at reading bios. So I'm going to ask you. So
No,
just,
you're
I'm asking you to brag a little bit now. But where I want you to is mention, if you would, name drop a little bit as far as who the ones, better ones, because quote unquote, or no, but what was it that they said, Amber, this is why I'm doing business with you, and how does it connect with what we've been talking about?
sure. Um, so I'll answer that first and then I'll circle back because I don't want to forget. But people hire me because they want what I do, if that makes sense. They are impressed by the operation and the standard. You go to my website and it's nice and you can feel something on the website. It's not a typical website. So ngngeenterprises.com, amberv.com will give you a sense of how we build websites. They're more experiential, right? We're trying to bridge that gap between human and digital. And so we're really trying to create more of an experience with the website. And then because they see the strategy baked into the customer journey, okay, I want you to watch the video, I want you to get our pricing menu, then you can have a call. It's so well organized and they love the experience that I'm taking them through. And then when I have a conversation with them, I make it all about them. It's not about me. I'm here to just give value. So I give and give and give and connect and give some more. And by the end, they're like, oh my gosh, I've not experienced anything like this. What else can we do together? And I say, well, here's the next step. If you want, no rush or pressure. And they can't even believe that's true. So it's more of the experience and they think, wow, that's top notch. I want that for me and my business. So that's why people hire me, I think. But I also have a proven track record. So, of the almost 15 years that we've been in business, we've launched more than 50 number one best-selling books. Funny enough, this was not something I advertised until about 2 years ago. It was the first time I advertised, even though I've been launching books for that long. And I don't know why that is. I think I was just focused on the website agency and the marketing services that we provide and live streaming. But the market kept saying, yeah, but we really want the book launch. So finally, I worked with, Mike McAllowitz, and he told everybody about NGNG, which I really appreciate. Even to this day, he's like, there's only one person that you should hire. And we did his most successful launch to date, which was Fix This Next. And it hit Wall Street Journal. It was about a year ago almost. And so I really, appreciate my clients because they're much more vocal about me than I am. I'm kind of like, I'm not a big bragger. My team even has to remind me, like, they'll tell me, Wade, please go out and brag a little bit. And it's like, I just want other people to do it for me. But we just launched a book for Martin Lindstrom, who's a well-known conscious thought leader. And we're able to hit number 2 on Wall Street Journal for his book, The Ministry of Common Sense. Actually, next week, we're launching a book for Dr. Daniel Amen, who's in the brain health space. He's already pre-sold about 50,000 copies of his book. So well on our way to his 13th New York Times bestseller. I'm really excited in March to launch John Lee Dumas's book, The um, Uncommon Path to Common Success. I always have to think a little bit on that one. Great book about how you can get started in the online world. So we're working with some really well-known influencers. I mean, in the past, I've launched books for Les Brown and Lisa Nichols and Mark Victor Hansen. But I've also worked with a lot of no-name authors who might have influence in their industries and they have great hearts and they deserve recognition too. And we've been able to hit Wall Street Journal or number 1 on Amazon, or we have some authors that don't care about the list. And so instead we're helping them generate, like we had two authors last year that generated more than $500,000 before the book launch even happened. So we're really focused on building a business, not just launching a book. The book is why people come to me, but then what they onboard for is because they realize I can help them build their platform, help them with a marketing operation, help them hire a creative marketing assistant, help them with a monetization model. They're starting to make early sales. I'm building their confidence. I'm managing their emotions. And our entire team does all of that. And there's not really anything on the market like that. So it's a pretty special place to be.
That's awesome. So one of the things that comes up when people delegate? I'm going to again switch because there's a lot of things you do. So in my mind, I'm just going through the different things you do and how you help people. So the leverage the scale, which has a lot to do with helping people train teams on how to do their social media and different things. And of
Yes.
course, you can speak to it more. Um, how do you know in general, though, as an entrepreneur, what are the signs that you're either delegating too slowly or you're delegating too fast? Because I know a lot of the times, if it was 10 years ago, most of the clients I met, they were delegating way too slowly. Like they weren't, they didn't want to delegate anything. And then now when I talk to people, especially since after Tim Ferriss wrote the 4 Hour Work Week, that a lot of people are like, well, I'm a delegate everything. And I was one of those, I'm a scud delegator sometimes. Like I just delegate something. I don't want to deal with it. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, it didn't get done. Oh, wait, that's right. I didn't give them good instructions. I didn't, or at least I thought I did. Or,
Mhm.
maybe there's a language difference as far as how you refer to things. But going back to that core question, how does somebody know that they should be delegating more, perhaps, even when it's perhaps scary financially at times when they're like,
Well,
okay, I'm not sure if I can afford to delegate.
yeah.
And then on the other side, how does somebody know when they're perhaps not connecting with people, they're not training their people right, and so they're scaling something that's going to end up, not coming back to bite them, but they're just kind of throwing away time and money.
Yeah. And it probably will come back, reputationally speaking, to bite them. If you are delegating too slow, then it's probably that you are unhappy. You are frustrated. You're doing the work yourself. You wish that you could have more help, but you do still have this mindset of scarcity. You don't think you can afford it. You've never been through it. You have some level of fear about it. So you keep trying to do it yourself. And instead of hiring even an agency, you're probably buying do-it-yourself courses, and then you're getting sucked into the course and you're probably not completing the course. So you keep doing it yourself, or you just don't do it. Let 3 more months go by until you hold yourself accountable and then try to kick yourself in the butt to go back and do it. And then the cycle just continues. But what you need to realize is that if you could spend your time focused on right activity, which as a business owner is speaking and selling, largely building relationships, right? Creating content only you can create, such as a podcast show, video tips, that sort of thing. That's the only thing that you should be spending your time on. Everything else can be delegated. And if you were to focus your time in that area, let's just pick out a hypothetical number for a minute that you could on average make $100 an hour. Like that's your rate of what you could go out there and sell divided by 40 hours in a week. That's your rate. Well, think about that. The average virtual assistant is $20 an hour, which means that if you can just stretch your mind a little bit to realize that for every hour that you get this virtual assistant to do the things that you hate doing anyway, you're actually profiting $80 an hour if you can hold yourself accountable, be disciplined, and focus on money making activities. So if you feel like, I don't know about this, then really the root of the problem is your insecurity around selling. If I can then come in and fix your insecurity around selling and help you do it in a way that doesn't totally freak you out or feel like misaligned with your values and personality, then you will actually be excited to go out and grow your business, in which case you're going to realize all of the time that you're wasting and think, of course, I need to hire somebody to do all of this other work for me. Then your challenge will become training that person to do what you need to do. Which, to your point, Wade, that's how leverage to scale was born. Most business owners don't like optimizing their own videos on YouTube and crafting a blog post that's search engine optimized and doing their own social media and sending an email to their email list. Terrible use of your time. Even if you do enjoy it, it's not a good use of your time. But we need to make sure that your assistant is trained properly so that they can do all of those things and act as you, be your voice, your personality. And that's what leverage to scale does. It trains somebody on your team to do all of that as if you're doing it. I'll tell you though, the big game changer and why leverage to scale is so successful is because I don't just train your virtual assistant on what to do, I teach them why that step is important. It's not just, oh, you need to add a tag and here's how to do it, because they're only going to understand it so much. But when you say, here's the importance of a tag and why we need to be thoughtful about doing keyword research and how many tags and why that is, all of a sudden they get it. It's anchored in. you've improved their thought leadership. So now they're starting to think like you, which means that they're able to make decisions like you. And then all of a sudden, you're not going to run into those issues that you talked about earlier, Wade, where you're delegating too fast, where all of a sudden it's just systems breaking down. They're not doing it the way you want. And that's so frustrating. Why can't they just do it right? Well, because you didn't tell them what to do, or more importantly, why that piece was important to you. Like in email formatting, Wade, I will tell my assistant, when you call out somebody's name in an email, like you're trying to get their attention, I want you to bold their name and highlight it in pink. Now, the reason that we do that is because people skim emails, and I don't want somebody to miss the fact that I've been trying to call their attention. So we're going to bold it, but then we're going to use pink so that it's really obvious and then they can't miss it. Well, now they get it. So they're going to do it every single time because it makes sense. So that's how you're going to delegate properly. As far as delegating too quickly, and this will be a short one. I don't have experience with that personally because I think as long as your documentation, your training, your leadership is in place in the right kind of way, you just have to, I guess, be careful that if you start hearing complaints from customers or followers that there are issues at hand, then maybe slow your roll a little bit, fix the problems, develop thought leadership again, then start speeding back up.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think of the times, gosh, in my software business, I remember I hired a team member. I was at one sales presentation, had just sold like 5 things or 8 things of software, whatever, so, subscription things. And I had to be somewhere the next day. And I'm listening to voicemails in between, like just crazy, just like, like had waited too long. And it really wasn't even scarcity. I didn't realize I was going to grow that quickly. And I remember I just, I explained this to my wife. I'm like, there's this technology I just discovered. It's so amazing. You take this thing of work and you give it to this technology, and this technology does it for you, and you keep some of the profit still. It's called an employee because that's what an employee. It's like this, is like blowing my mind because I didn't, I'd started as a solopreneur, and again, the income wasn't enough, and all of a sudden the income just started growing more and more, and because it was seasonal even, I almost kind of played with it like, okay, well, I did it the rookie way of, okay, well, I'm going to wait through the non-season. And I mean, great game plan. I'm waiting till the middle of season. I'm going to try to hire somebody. And that's how I know, by the way, that's how I know there's a God. So I'm not looking to make this spiritual, but because I actually found somebody on monster.com, 16 years ago out of nowhere that worked from home virtually with me for 11 years. Awesome person. Yeah, that was my first hire. I thought I was brilliant. I was like 1 for 1. And of course, the future hires, I got my butt handed to me, and I came back to the normal average of about 1 out of 3, 1 out of whatever. But the thing that was so interesting is, to your point, is it was for me, it was a combination of insecurity and yeah, I'm a lifestyle entrepreneur. Part of it was laziness. I don't want to have to sell more. Like I know how to, but to your point, and this is why what you're doing is so interesting to me, because I've tapped into it at times, maybe somewhat consciously, somewhat unconsciously, is if you tell me that, wait, hold on, these are the people I like doing business with, great, I'll talk to them all day long. And ironically, when I do sales coach with my clients, I'm like, yeah, here's the filters. We got to have the filters in place. Because in the insurance agency model, it's like, well, Wade, all my clients buy auto insurance. Why? Because they have to. It's the law. How many of them actually want to talk about protecting their income, protecting their family with life insurance? Well, maybe 20%. Okay, so how do I filter those? Because 80% of them, or maybe 50% of them, don't want to talk about it at all. And you'll actually borderline annoy them. And now you risk the business. And yet there's this 20% that, hey, if somebody dies, they don't have life insurance. That's a pretty big deal. And so, there's a lot at stake there. And we talk about somebody's business as an entrepreneur. Wait, if this person's message doesn't get out there, how do you bring your passion? So, you're working with these people that are making huge impacts on people's lives. John Lee Dumas, Les Brown, Brendan Burchard, Mike McAllowitz. How do you also bring in your sense of, well, yes, that's a type of message that I'm about? I mean, do you filter out certain people like, yeah, I don't like this person's work, or does that even happen?
It has happened twice. And it was very difficult for me because in both instances, I really liked the person. And one in particular that I'm thinking of, it was just a topic that I just couldn't pursue. And it was very difficult. I mean, it took me 2 weeks to really sit with it and challenge myself and hold myself accountable and challenge my beliefs. And why did that matter? And did it really matter? And, is it what other people think? Is it what I think? I mean, I really went deep with it. And I looked at it as a great learning opportunity, but ultimately I had to be honest. And I did get to the root of why it bothered me so much. And, I was just honest, and it was actually a really beautiful conversation. I wasn't scolded or reprimanded or judged for it. They appreciated my honesty. But most times, the authors that I work with are nonfiction and they're business books, which is totally my passion. So it's really easy to get on board and get behind them as well. Um, and don't really work with very many fiction-based authors and website clients, gosh, in every industry you can think of. But generally the people that I attract in are more conscious thought leaders, and so they're not doing bad things in the world, and they all want to help people. So it's really easy to get behind whatever their message is, and it's really easy to get behind who the person is. But I would never take a client on that didn't align with my values, which is why I keep coming back to that work. And I think there's also something to be said about really identifying your personal why as a business owner. Why do this business? Why are you even doing coaching to begin with? Like, where is the spark, and what does light you up? And then how can you expand that and get more of that one piece of it? And that's actually how you're going to start niching down into a clientele that you just thoroughly love and your work is so fulfilling, or in a service that you love. As an example, Wade, I used to offer funnel build out as a service, and we do your landing pages and your sales pages and your webinars and your affiliate programs. And one day I woke up and I was like, I hate doing this work. I'm miserable. It's draining. You couldn't even pay me enough money to want to do it. I know how to do it and I'm really good at it, but that doesn't mean I should be doing it. So you have to pay attention to your feelings, as woo as some people might think that is. It's going to give you that really clear indication if you're doing a service that you don't really like, so maybe you're lazy about it, or that you love it so much you can't wait to get on the phone and work and talk about it, or if that client is a right fit or a wrong fit, right? Remember the grumpy guy? Oh my gosh, that was not a good fit. So listen to those feelings and you'll always know the right way to go.
That's awesome. One of the things I think a lot of people struggle with is in the social media, this idea of, okay, well, you know, when does it start turning into leads? When does it start turning into buyers? Because on one hand, there's the person that says, okay, I've been doing social media 3 days now. Where are my leads?
Ugh,
And
yeah.
then there's the other person that's saying, okay, I'm going to do this forever. And as somebody who's, done different business models, I thought I was going out first as a coach, and I did that. And a couple things happened in my just in the marketplace and whatnot that shifted that. And all of a sudden, somebody said, "Hey, would you build this software?" And I thought, oh, I don't really want to build software. It wasn't my passion, but I'm good at, but I enjoy the challenge. Like I was like, okay, sure. And just like that, something that I didn't intend upon has for over 20 years provided mostly 70% or more of my income in a business I can run in about 8 hours a week. So for that sense, for me, I have humility around, okay, I might not always be the greatest judge of what is it that I do that's unique. And I think some people are concerned about that. And then also there's this concern of, well, wait, what if, and I know my answer to this question, but I'm curious to hear yours. But Wade, what if I spend 5 years doing social media, doing work, doing blog posts, doing videos about a topic, and it doesn't monetize? Because there's a practical side to that, and there's a emotional side to that of the disappointment. What's your answer to that person? And I've got an idea, but I'm curious to hear yours.
I don't think that it's the product or service that the person is selling that's the problem. I think the problem is that typically you are being way too generic in your content. It's not specific enough. You don't know your avatar and who you really want to work with well enough. and likely you have some sort of insecurity that's blocking your ability to direct people into the options that they have to work with you. And one of the ways that you can solve this is by hiring a coach, truly, because you need somebody who can see what you can't see because you're in the weeds, right? You can't see the forest through the trees, right? Um, and so I'll give you a quick story that there was a client named Layla who lived in the UK, and she came to me and said, Amber, I've done it all right. Every single thing right. And I'm thinking, yeah, I've heard that a lot. And usually that's not the case, but I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. Super sweet girl. Went to her website and I was like, dang, her website was awesome, baked with strategy and conversion. And I thought, well, that's odd. And then I went to her social media, looked awesome. And I was like, that's odd. Signed up for her email list, went through her funnel. It was perfection. I looked at her program. It was amazing. And I thought, oh my gosh, what could be wrong? And she's like, I tried marketing. I've tried selling. I've done all the right things. And I said, well, when's the last time that you surveyed your audience? And she said, well, I haven't ever surveyed my audience. And I said, well, let's survey your audience and find out who you've attracted in. Layla had a business and a product that was teaching pregnant women how to have a successful and healthy labor. When we surveyed her audience, we found out that the people she'd attracted in were not pregnant yet. They were thinking ahead and trying to do some research on pregnancy, but they didn't need her program because they weren't even pregnant yet. So I said, Layla, quick fix. All you got to do is build a program around how to have how to get pregnant or, something along those lines. You'll capture everybody into the first program. Then it will be an automatic yes into the second program. And so one coaching call, that's all it took. Her problem was solved. Business totally corrected itself. The money started flowing. It was beautiful. So you really have to get a coach to see what you can't. Survey your audience, get really clear on your avatar. I think that you need to be really direct in offering them choices and not let your insecurity get in your own way. And you need to also be consistent in your marketing as well. I mean, those are some things that come to mind, but I'm curious, Wade, what was the answer that came to your mind so quickly?
So awesome. Well, God, wow. See, now thought I had a good answer. So, well, there's two answers. One was an answer which I heard recently. I'm going to paraphrase it, that somebody apparently had asked. Now it's a meme, so who knows if this happened? But anyway, apparently somebody asked Elon Musk, what he could do or what should be done to help entrepreneurs feel less secure or less insecure about being entrepreneurs. And he said, "Don't be an entrepreneur." Like, if you can't handle that, there's going to be some insecurity in this, then you're. And and it just very clearly, like, oh yeah, like almost like, well, why would they be an entrepreneur? Because they're looking for security. You don't. That's not what this gig is
That
about.
is not entrepreneurship.
Well, and my answer for the second thing relates to what I've done. So I have some books I've written on spirituality that, for whatever reason, I've chosen not to try to monetize. I just, whatever in my brain and my, however it is, wrote them 20 years ago. I lightly share them. I have courses around them and whatnot. But for me, the answer is, well, what if I made the videos and didn't make money? Well, that wasn't my objective for those. And then on the other side, the stuff that I am looking to make money at, well, I got to figure that out real quickly. And I'm not looking to social media. To me, it's one of many channels. So if social media doesn't work, because it's not a matter, at least for me, it's not if it works, it's, can I get it to work? To your point, of an avatar, does it work with your audience? Is your audience even on that platform? There's so many mechanics, but I think it depends. And it speaks to that thing of that sometimes people want your job to be your everything. It's going to fulfill me and meet my needs and this, that, and it's going to raise the kids. And it's like, whoa, no, it's going to do certain things for you, but not necessarily more. But actually, I like your answer a lot better. All right. So where can
You're
people,
the best.
where can people learn more about you and the work you do?
I am all over online. So pick your channel. I've got a ton of YouTube videos packed with value. My website, there's a lot of great content, free offers, a lot of meaningful connection waiting for you. So at ngngenterprises.com and amberv.com. I also do a lot of speaking to small groups and masterminds and live stream shows. I do it all because it's fun, and why not? You have to get yourself out there if you want to make an impact in the world and feel that fulfillment. So no guts, no glory, man. Go do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for those listening, in case you haven't realized, listen again if you missed some of this stuff. Really good stuff Amber shared with us today. Thank you so much. And as always, look forward to helping you in the audience create the life and the lifestyle you most desire so you can better enjoy your family, your friends, and your life. Thanks for listening.